Now we are live. Hello from Cornell Tech, from Roosevelt Island. Hopefully everybody can hear us. So we checked, it should be fine. Um, Welcome to our session, the Praxis of Teaching Knowledge Graphs. We will do a panel as the last, in the last bracket of this day on the Knowledge Graph conference. Uh, I am Timm Amstein. I'm from Capgemini, a solutions architect, and I will be your moderator today. Yes, let's see what we have planned because should be a panel, and we shouldn't take too much of of time talking about just introduction. So I think yes. I'm from Capgemini. I am teaching for the last 3 years people from all different sectors, developers, salespersons, clients, and so on. And therefore, my objective is to really bring things, knowledge graph, into a broad spectrum and teach people from all different backgrounds. And I had, or we worked together by the Knowledge Graph Conference with Aura and Cogan as co-organizers that also have the same inspiration. So I think since he's sitting right behind me, I will give.
Yeah, so I'm Ora, and my interest in this is really comes from a very long time ago. I've been talking about this stuff to a lot of people. Now I realize that a lot of people are learning this stuff not in school, not through classwork, but they're self-teaching themselves, or they go to YouTube or whatever. So I think we need to kind of broaden the idea of how we educate people. So that's my interest here.
Thank you.
And Cogan?
Hi, my name's Cogan Shimitzu. I'm at Wright State University in Ohio, and my goal is to kind of bring together disparate educational material all about the different pieces of knowledge engineering, because right now it's really scattered and there's really no clear path on how to kind of go from nothing to something without a lot of heartache. So trying to smooth over that process is really my goal here.
Thank you. So yes, exactly. That is our motivation is really talk about how people learn knowledge graph, how we teach knowledge graph, how can we do this properly, and really discuss our experience. What works good, what works bad, what are the best practices we should see, and to do that, we've brought to you. Three different experts from different fields, and I think I will leave it to them to introduce themselves. Please also give a little bit of an introduction. What are your current stakeholders, or what are the persons that you are normally teaching and that you're looking at? And I think I will give the word to Florence at first.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tim. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. And I wish I could be there in person, but as you can tell, we're kind of all over the planet right now. So it's always great to collaborate, and that's part of what I'll be talking about, how we teach data science remotely. So I'm Executive Director of the NSF-funded Northeast Big Data Innovation Hub at Columbia University, and PI on the COVID Information Commons, also funded by NSF. We founded a National Student Data Core at the beginning of 2021, in the middle of the pandemic, to bring data science awareness and education opportunities to students around the world, starting with the Northeast US, which was our focus. It was a Northeast Student Data Core. Before we know it, we are in like 27 countries around the planet. So we changed it from Northeast to national with an international reach. And what we find is that the students from across the US, from India, Mali, Ethiopia, they love having the open, free online data science education that we provide. We link to other education resources. We have data science career panels. We have a community of support that we really build for them and enable them to have chapters of the NSDC at their school as well. There are about 14 chapters in the US, 7 in India, and we work with over 4,000 learners around the US and these countries. What we find is that we target higher ed, undergraduate and graduate students, but we find that we have adult learners, people that are retooling themselves that want to learn about data science and probably about knowledge graphs. I think this will be a very interested community in what we want to do next, and we would love to add this content. We even have moms of middle school students that reach out to us and want their students to learn about data science. We also do a lot of specific outreach to some of the underserved minority serving institutions in the US. And so we want to make sure that those who don't have access to data science, they don't even know the words go together, that we teach them that it's an opportunity for them for the future. So that's what we do. We also, the National Student Data Corps is part of the Northeast Big Data Hub, which actually has about 8,000 members around the planet. And that we have our focus areas of education, data literacy, health, urban to rural communities, and responsible data science, including security, privacy, and ethics.
Thank you. So then I think Nicholas would be next.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Nico. I'm an independent consultant. So I'm very active in an area of, let's say, semantics and knowledge graph, which I would consider much more of a niche, probably to many of you, which is the open biomedical and biological ontology foundry. We are very concerned in particular with the relationship of how to curate and create biological and biomedical ontologies, and how these ontologies also relate to various knowledge graph integration efforts. So my personal interest is both on the side of what Cogan was saying before, collating and creating online, usually self-paced resources for various groups of people in this area. So we are particularly concerned with the fact that we have stakeholders that are semantic software engineers, there are database curators, ontology curators, and all these and biologists from like various completely different backgrounds that all need to kind of are part of organizations that pivot into the area of knowledge graphs. And that are situated in also very different environments. Like some of them are members of open science projects, research centers like JAX, LBNL, and so on. Others are parts of nonprofits and big collaboratives like Odyssey, for whoever has heard, for example, of like OMOP, and also some industrial stakeholders like that listen to, at least come from like also from like startups that come to our tutorials to learn about how to model ontologies and how these things are related also with knowledge graphs.
Great, thank you. Then our third panelist, Nicole, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay? Great.
Yes, we can.
Good. Hi, I'm Nicole Vasilevsky. I'm currently the Associate Director of Data Science at a nonprofit called the Critical Path Institute, which is aiming to accelerate drug development. And we have a data science department that's building an application-specific ontology to drive some data sharing platform that we have with an underlying knowledge graph. I recently took this position. I was previously at the University of Colorado, and then before that, Oregon Health and Science University, where I've worked in ontology development and biocuration for the last 12 or so years. And one of the big projects that I've been working on and I work on with Nico is the OBO Academy, which was created initially by funding from CPATH. Nico and myself and some others were hired as consultants for their group to train their data engineers in ontology development and semantic engineering. And the funding that we were funded to create these resources for training, the specific purposes of training these employees, but the current associate director at the time allowed us to make all the materials freely available online after we finished doing the employee training. that's what we use to create the Obo Academy, which is a resource of online, freely available, self-paced training materials covering all aspects of semantic engineering. And it's meant to target anyone at any level, so beginner level to more advanced levels. And we've also been implementing and hosting online sessions with remote employees and collaborators that we work with to go over specific topics on a biweekly basis and help train this workforce.
Great, thank you. Then I think let's get this going. I think I incorporated already the question, what are the main stakeholders. So the first thing that we want to highlight on what I think it is obvious for the last years we had this problem, or we had this huge transition to everything goes online, and much stuff is self-paced and so on due to the pandemic. But what do you see really as the greatest challenges that you have been facing in your education initiatives, and really what are the things that what created the biggest problems for you? Is anybody or I think Aura, what was the biggest problem for you that you are facing?
Well, I mean, I think the absolute biggest problem I'm facing is that there are a lot of people out there who don't know that they could actually benefit from graphs. So before we can even educate them on the graphs, we have to somehow reach them through some mechanism, some type of outreach. And then, of course, at least in my day-to-day work at AWS, what I'm facing is that many different kinds of people. So there's a huge spectrum of, some people already are quite knowledgeable and they don't need much education. Others don't know anything about graphs. So I'm constantly faced with this sort of disparity or sort of wide spectrum of what people know beforehand.
Thank you. So, Nicolas, what do you think is your biggest challenge, or has been your biggest challenge?
You're very lucky, Aura, that you have members on your team that don't need much education. So most of the kind of experiences that we have, because essentially when we are pivoting to knowledge graphs, like knowledge graphs is usually introduced as a new thought, like an organizational shift or a cultural shift in a bigger project. And then what this means is that a lot of people pivot into this area, which come from a completely different backgrounds, usually like software engineers or even biologists. So I consider this very much like a problem of like some kind of like transfer learning where we need to kind of re-educate people with completely different backgrounds. And it is almost never the case that anyone in these projects has a very significant background. And even people like us, like for example, I have, let's say, a PhD in owl reasoning, will be challenged by 85% of the problems that we are faced with when we are building knowledge graphs. So I personally think that the biggest challenge is actually that this ecosystem of knowledge graphs is extremely diverse. So not only do we have a lot of tech stacks like labeled property graphs or semantic web technologies, but even within these tech stacks, there's so many like different things that need to be considered, like the whole debate of OWL versus shape languages. There's so many strategies for different strategies for building ETL systems for knowledge graphs based on RML or based on some Python pydantic classes, thousands of mapping and matching approaches, and completely different philosophies of modeling knowledge graph. And I think that this diversity and the confusion that comes from these messaging, like, oh, I hate OWL, or everything should be OWL, or use classes, not individuals, or use an upper ontology like BFO, or do not ever use something terrible as EFO. All these conflicting messages really make it hard to even get these people from a different background to even start with building up their own culture, their own thinking in this area. So that's what I consider the biggest problem. We don't have an easy way to communicate this extreme diversity right now and organize it a little bit cognitively for these people that have never heard about these technologies.
Thank you. Yeah. So, Nicole, do you agree, or do you see other challenges?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that's a really good point about the different conflicting messages and different perspectives. At CPATH, we're training our staff on knowledge graph development, and they're doing knowledge graph projects. And Nico and our collaborators at Monarch are doing a lot of the training for them. But my boss, Ramona, who's the executive director, she was suggesting that we actually talk to some other groups too. We have another consulting group that we're working with just to get different perspectives on knowledge graph development, which I thought was a really smart idea to do that. Another thing that I see as a challenge is the best way to deliver the content. Like different people have different learning styles and how they're going to really resonate with material. One thing that I think we've done a really good job with in the Obo Academy is all the material that we've shared is intended to be self-paced, and it's not in PowerPoint, which I think is my favorite thing because we all go to so many seminars and webinars and kind of like this death by PowerPoint situation. And we've avoided using PowerPoint, and we put all the content into like a Read the Docs website that's all just textual with images, and we have interactive exercises in there. So I think that's been a big win for us is delivering that content that way. But then it's also hard to say which is the best way for people to review the content. It seems like it's been pretty well received. I personally like that format. And I think another thing that's challenging is for, like Nico was saying, of people kind of pivoting and entering this field from a non-technical background or an inexperienced background. I think we also have to recognize that when we're developing training materials that are meant to be accessible for people entering the field, that we need to be careful with how we provide instructions that are accessible to non-technical people. I come from a biology background and I'm not a developer, so a lot of times when I look at instructions that are kind of written with developers in mind, I have no idea how to begin. So I think we need to be careful with how we develop our content and share it to make sure that people who don't have a technical background can actually go in and use the learning materials. Like it needs to be like really like straightforward and like hand holding and like very explicit about what needs to be done.
Yes, totally agree. Cogan, what are your
Yeah, sure. I've got an answer. I've got a couple of answers because it depends a little bit on which hat I wear, right? So I'm an academic. I'm a professor that teaches this, and I'm somebody who seeks proposals, or seeks to win proposals, I think is better to say, that deal with knowledge graphs. And there's a really big gulf that kind of appears in both of these, which is how do you convince a student who's taking your course as a technical elective that these are actually valuable skills for them to learn? I don't know if I've succeeded in that because knowledge graphs remain a little bit niche, right? They remain a little bit more of the esoteric or exotic. They're certainly growing in awareness across the spectrum of software development, but what is a good way to address why not just use a database, right? I've gotten that exact comment in proposal feedback as well. You didn't motivate this well enough to use the knowledge graph. I think I could do this in 15 minutes in a database, right? And trying to overcome that initial gulf, which many of us who are experienced with knowledge graphs already is a little bit difficult, and something we might take for granted. And what are the effective ways to demonstrate that in a pithy, or is it pithy manner, right? And ensure that we're getting our point across, and that that people, students or stakeholders, funders, actually find this to be a valuable technology to invest both their time and energy in.
Thank you for the insights. So, Florence, can you hear us again?
Yes, I'm sorry, my internet cut out. I had to reconnect and sit right next to the router. Is this better?
Now we can hear you again. Yeah, thank you. So, what
Networking is
are your
wonderful.
biggest challenges in your education initiative?
So initially, the biggest challenge was responding to the demand by the students once we announced this, Student Data Core, which was interesting. We announced it as the Northeast Student Data Core because we're the Northeast Big Data Innovation Hub. And over 700 students registered from like around the country and around the world. So we had to get a new Zoom webinar license. We're like, why are all these students coming to this? Because they're really interested and they really want to learn. Then the next things that were challenges were to help them learn about data science as being a team sport. So a number of the students will work with us and say, we create these little data science project teams and they work together and they'll tell us, we've never done data science like on a team before. I was like, whoa, we really need to look at data science and knowledge graphs as a team effort because you have the data science practitioners, the domain experts, all of us have some type of domain expertise, but what we're trying to do is bring them together. And so what we've done is created these interactive, collaborative data science projects where students from multiple institutions around the world can work together. We have a Google Colab notebook. We have Columbia University master's students in data science that coach them. We do office hours with them. So we're trying to find the ways we can, as we do as teachers, to meet them where they are and help them grow. So what we do is listen to the challenges they have, listen to what they're asking for. They say, I need practical experience on how to use these tools. I'm like, oh, I'm glad you're asking about that, right? So then we find ways to do that with collaborative projects. Also, like Cogan, like you're saying, how do they know if it's worth it, to bother studying this, right? And so one of the things that we do are these data science career panels, and we can do them leveraging knowledge graphs too in the future if we want. We haven't done that yet. And we'll have people there was a VP from Warner Music talking about how he leads data science and analytics for them, or professors at Temple University in bioinformatics, or people at startups like Databricks, or Mass Mutual Insurance, or Wild Me for animal conservation. So what we do is bring the reality to what are the problems we're trying to solve? How can we use these tools and techniques to do good? And so that what we try to do is listen to all the questions they have, like we're talking about, and then try to help find answers like any good engineer or scientist. We love fixing things and creating things, right? And so those are some of the things, but we learn challenges every day. So we'll keep trying to.
Thank you, Florent. I think we've lost you again, or we couldn't hear hear your last sentence. But Nicholas wanted to say.
Were you able to hear me?
We've lost you for a second, but yeah.
I just want to just quickly relate to this point that both Cogan and Florence were making, that this problem of articulating clearly the value proposition. So I think I listed this kind of as my kind of first point in the question of what are the biggest errors that we've did in the past. And I think that people like us that are engineers, who are kind of the people that are usually charged with developing these training materials, we have a natural gravitation towards developing technical tutorials that show people how can they build an ETL system, how can they build an ontology or something like that. While I think that what we should be doing much more of is actually focusing on translating or helping people understand and translating their business or domain problems into knowledge graph solutions, and also understanding then the associated value propositions exactly. So whenever I am in a sort of consultant situation where I see, because knowledge graphs are a lot of fun, they set up their Neptune, they load their data sets, they start querying, they see all these cool things that they are doing, but I usually have to put the brakes on and say, guys, please do not implement something new before you have connected that idea back to the value proposition and to the use cases or to the competency questions that you originally set out to solve. And I think this focus, like building training materials that actually incorporate this thought process, this idea of translation, this idea of mapping domain and business problems into semantic and knowledge graph solutions is really a key issue that we need to address much better in these resources.
Yeah, I also want to double down on that from my experience. So my biggest challenge is, without a doubt, is time, because I'm really I have development or developers that need to learn this technology. Then I have to discuss with their bosses to how much time do they get to learn this until we get them to a practical job to really do this for a client. But that is not the biggest deal. The biggest challenge I have is with salespeople, with non-technical people, with also with clients that give you, maybe they give you half an hour, maybe they give you a 5-minute pitch, and really say what's in it for me. What I don't know the technology. Please give me a one slider. What is knowledge graph, and what's in it for me? And I'm really, as a technical guy, I really have the challenge to, okay, I cannot put knowledge graph in one slide, and I don't want to, but really for this specific person, there has to be some input that I can give, which makes totally clear, which is obvious for everybody who's in that field, who's convinced and a graph enthusiast that this is the way to go, that yeah, they should be investing in this, because really, maybe after you convince somebody after 5 minutes, you get the next session in the next workshop or so, then you get a day. But what you can do in a day is also very limited compared to what you can do with a course which is going for a week or a month, or is self-paced and takes a lot of time. So really, that question of different, I can totally double down on what are the users, what are the use cases, what is our audience, is so important, and really makes the biggest challenge for me to really be able to somehow adjust there, because not everybody is as technical as somebody else, and most of the people aren't, to be honest. And that's really something we have to cope with.
I can add to that. I've been talking to people about the semantic web and its benefits for well over 20 years now, and I've come to realize that there is no such use case that fits on one PowerPoint slide and is within people's attention span that would be sophisticated enough to truly kind of showcase the benefits of these technologies. Whenever I give people a simple example, they say, well, I can just use JSON, or I have these Python weenies who write this in an afternoon or something like that. And if I put an example out there that's like sophisticated enough where we really can benefit from all these technologies, then it's beyond their attention span and they lose interest. This has been a big challenge.
Well, it sounds like we have work to do as a team then, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's a really different work for different people. And I think that gives us a good step to the next question, or I want to take the next. Maybe if all of you could highlight what is your biggest success or the most important thing that you say, okay, that is a success factor for my my initiative or what I'm doing. And maybe also as maybe a little bit of a different approach, give us one error that you really did where you said, okay, that didn't work, and that if I knew that beforehand, I would be pretty happy, and so I wouldn't fall into that pit hole. So maybe Florence. You,
Sure. Can you hear me now?
yes.
Okay, I'll speak slowly in case the internet is bumpy so you can guess what I said in between. So I would say the biggest success factor for teaching the data science tools and techniques and the value is having a free, open, online, easily accessible website with all of this content. We have a Learner Central that starts from the basics, no prerequisites, links to Khan Academy math, get started, all the way to the OpenDS for All GitHub material that IBM has been leading, and now they're handing it over to us at the Northeast Big Data Hub to lead. And so, and we have unsupervised and supervised machine learning approaches, all sorts of things, Jupyter notebooks. And we have students that actually record videos of the PowerPoint materials and the Jupyter notebooks to teach how to use them and teach the material. 15-minute videos, keep it simple. We have a whole video library. So having this open online material where learners could learn at their own pace. We've had students say to us, we're taking classes, but this is hard stuff, and it's great that we can go back and learn at our own pace. And you can keep listening to the video over and over again if you want on supervised machine learning. That's fine. And then what we do is partner that with a mentoring channel. We have, I think, over 600 people now in our mentoring channel for the National Student Data Corps. And then we do these career panels and data science projects where they can get a real feel. Like you're saying, it's hard to explain. So what comes out of this? So when I use convolutional neural networks for unsupervised machine learning, what happens then, and what's the value of that? But if we teach them, if we let them see humans that look like them, and we have a very diverse group on these panels that are using it for good, then they start getting a feel for it. So it helps them ingest and digest it. And what's around the whole thing is that this Student Data Corps is a community of support. So they do data science projects together. They have chapters at their own school, kind of like the Society of Women Engineers or National Society for Black Engineers, like that, but for data science. And so they don't have to feel alone, because in areas like this, data science, and especially knowledge graphs, which is even newer and smaller right now, if you like it, you might feel very alone where you are. There may be nobody you can talk to about it, maybe one professor and your roommate. And so what we want to do is allow them to find other people and collaborate with them that are interested in these topics too, and they can learn it together. So it's this community of support and this content that we provide that I think is the biggest success factor.
And what is
I'll let someone else.
what would you see as the biggest error, or the thing that you wouldn't recommend anybody to do?
Being an engineer, an aerospace engineer by training, when there is an error, failure is not an option. So we always figure out what to do next. So I don't know that I would say error. I think there are learnings along the way. Sometimes we'll try to do a very niche career panel, but we want everyone to care, but not everybody cares. So only those domain people or only that constituency will show up. We're like, oh, we really wanted to help people learn what they don't know. So that's one of the challenges sometimes is people, focus on where they are and don't necessarily see kind of the integrated systems design approach, how a lot of this stuff works together. That's a difficult thing to teach sometimes if they're not kind of taught that way in general. So that's been one of the challenges. So then we pivoted and went, broader and have more of a range of presenters when we do a panel. So if somebody's interested in data science for athletics, or they don't know what to do, they can hear athletics, they can hear finance, they can hear something else. So it gives them a broader view of what the possibilities might be, which is actually good for them, because data science they're probably coming to our program because they don't know a lot about it. So they'd really probably like a broader approach to understand, how can I benefit from this? How can I do good? And how can I make a career out of this if I'm not sure what I want to do yet? So we try to listen when there's an error, as you say, to see what we can learn from it and then pivot.
Thank you. Nicole, what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, so with regard to success factors, yeah, I would say one of the biggest things that we've been successful with is that we created this OBO Academy, and we previously had all this documentation, training materials, workflows, and such for our ontology building and knowledge graph engineering, all in disparate places. It was really distributed, not formatted in consistent ways. We had different documentation for different projects, and creating this OBO Academy and creating a centralized kind of single source of truth place for our documentation has probably been the most valuable thing that we've been able to do for our community. And I think really to truly assess the value and the success of this project would be knowing that people are using our training materials and applying them to build knowledge graphs and showing some kind of utility and derivation of new knowledge. Some of the things that we've have been challenges or errors for us, I'd say one thing was one of the real successes with the OBO Academy is that we have this consistent template format that we use, whereas previously everything was just kind of documented as however we came up with the documentation without any kind of unified strategy or way of organizing the material. Nico he suggested that we use this diataxis framework where everything is organized into 4 different ways, where you have how-to guides, you have lessons, you have explanations, and you have reference material. So we follow this format really closely. So I feel like the documentation that we have on the website is really clear and easy to follow. Like if you need to set up an ontology editor, we have instructions on how to set up Protege, or if you want to learn how to use specific workflows, we have lessons on those and such. So I think using a templated format and having like a good project management plan before going into delivering and organizing the training materials is really valuable. And also having the community development aspect has been really valuable for us, making sure that we have community buy-in and people using the materials, but not only using them, but also contributing to them. So everything on OBO Academy is in Read the Docs, but it has you can edit it through GitHub on the back end. So anybody who has a GitHub account can go into GitHub and make edits and do a pull request to our materials. And if you don't know how to use GitHub or make pull requests, we have lessons on how to do that. So our hope is that by making this available to the community and for the community, and really kind of trying to promote this community aspect, that these aren't materials that are that belong to anyone in particular. They belong to everybody, and everybody's welcomed and encouraged to contribute to them. Another point, something that kind of a real success for us was that that CPATH initially funded the creation of these materials, and we would hope that we can get more companies to take advantage of opportunities like this. That if companies would put the money and funding into hiring people to develop these training materials, then they can help promote, enhance the workforce development and enhance the ability of people to learn these workflows, and then they can also get recognition for these kinds of contributions in developing a quality workforce.
Thank you. And then looking at the other aspect, what would you recommend not doing?
Oh, not well. I think one big thing is that the time involved to create these training materials is quite a lot. So just keeping in mind that it's not easy to create these, and making sure you have proper amount of time allocated to do this, and then asking for help too. And specifically, sometimes we call out for volunteers. Say if anyone can contribute, we welcome that. But then sometimes you don't always get a lot of responses. But then if you ask people specifically, usually you get a lot more engagement, and I think people like being engaged in that way too. Feel, oh, like I was personally asked to do this, so then I think people are more inclined. So asking for help is another really important thing, in my opinion.
Great, thank you. So I think, Aura?
Well, I realized that my biggest success is almost also related to my biggest kind of failure. Through the years, I think my biggest failure was that I didn't understand that technical details don't really matter very much when you're teaching these things. That the technical details come later. And okay, so it's a story that most of you have probably heard that I keep telling, but I basically taught about knowledge graphs to my 7-year-old daughter many years ago. and she completely got it, and it was sort of a transformative moment for me because I understood that I was able to explain all of that stuff without any kind of technical details. So nothing to kind of distract from the learning of the basic principles and how to do modeling and stuff like that. And it made me realize that this is essentially something for the masses. You don't have to be a database expert or computer scientist even to take advantage of these technologies. To me, that's a success, and not having understood that before was a failure.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, just for you guys, all the material and so on that we are mentioning and all the initiatives, we will share the links in the slide deck that we will upload, and also the links will be probably shared in the chat soon. Then I think, Cogan, what are your opinions?
Oh boy. So we'll start with you know what, I think I'm in the same boat with Aura here, where my biggest success and biggest error are two sides of the same coin, where it's how do I teach this? So I've taught this for a few years now, and the course structure has changed significantly over the years in order to kind of address iteratively the errors that I encountered. And I think one of the biggest ones was right in line with Aura, is that you just have to do it, right? You don't necessarily have to do it well, or according to the standards. You have to understand that you're creating a graph structure. You have to understand that you're drawing information from several different places, and you kind of run into the pain points as a student yourself, and then it becomes a little bit self-motivating, like there has to be a better way. And well, the better way is in the course material just later on, right? I've driven a course like this purely theoretically at first for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then by the time it's actually time to do anything interesting, the students are so disengaged with the content and the ideas that it just is extremely ineffective. So kind of flipping that on the head, where it's really, really quickly, this is just kind of how you do it. Now let's do it. And then maybe do it in a little bit of the mentorship way, tying it to a topic that they like. So I tend to take the course and then allow them to choose the topic that they're going to make a knowledge graph for 8 weeks of the entire course. And that helps them, it gets that sort of personal interest and investment in. And so, yeah. I think that's roughly how it is. I think from a different perspective, the other error is when I started my own educational initiatives, is I did not do a good job at looking to see what was already out there. And being able to lean on and build together with other people, this community aspect is a lot more important than I ever would have considered at the beginning of my trajectory. Like I really regret learning about the Obo book in September instead of 2 or 3 years ago. So yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you. And Nicholas, what are your opinions?
Yeah, so I will hook on to something that Nicole said, which is probably an annoying and slightly boring part, but I think it's a very important thing to consider, especially given the resource constraints that our domain still has when it comes to generating materials, which is the problem that generating educational materials is simply an extremely hard piece of work. So it just takes a lot of time, and it is also there's also some kind of like exponential factor in doing it for between doing a mediocre job, which compared to doing a really good job at generating these things. So what I want to kind of emphasize here, and if there is a possibility to solve this would be great, is getting something like an open resource off the ground is considerably harder without a seed funding. And I think that if we can focus a little bit more on getting nonprofits or even companies, even like Amazon, to understand that investing amounts, and we are talking not like seed fundings around maybe 70,000, 100,000 to get something like this started properly, and convince them that the fact that this will, give them also recognition in the eyes of the learner, and also vastly improve the quality of the workforce, and these kinds of aspects would be really good for getting these resources off the ground. And I think that we had both luck and we really did a good job for taking that seed funding that we were provided to create a basic resource. And then when we had just enough seed funding, pivoting it to a system that was focused, where the curation kind of process was focused around seminars and tech support. So basically what we did then, after we had the starting point, is we kind of like switched our model to something that looked more like a classical seminar series, where we organized, let's say, bi-weekly seminars. And we had already all our nice templates for how do you create coursework, how do we structure our kind of like taught part. So we basically required every seminar to be accompanied by a self-paced documentation page. Then in the seminar, we would make a recording. So we didn't ask anyone to pre-record anything. We would just record the seminar. We would upload the seminar recording. And by doing so, slowly started extending the resource. And if you have, like, let's say 20 seminars per year, you can see that even it's a considerable amount of stuff that you can get together in a year's time already, for if you follow this model. And for the other parts, like building the community and the people that are getting more engaged with your tooling as a consequence of all the materials that you're putting out there, you just have you also have like this place where you can, for example, codify or document solutions to general problems, like fixing bugs, fixing setup problems. Like, how many times have we answered the problem of why did your Docker pipelines fail because of some memory limitations? And we just have like one place now where we can document a little how-to guide, how to increase your memory, and we just can easily share it. And whenever some process like this comes, whenever someone reports a problem that hasn't been recorded yet, someone in the community will write a little guide, stick it on there, and for the future it's there, and we don't actually need to create any kind of first-hand support for this person anymore, but we can just share the documentation pages. So I think this kind of thing, that starting from somewhere that is supported by someone that has a bit of money and can invest in it, and then getting the community to take over and building something like a seminar support infrastructure around it, I think it's a really good model, and we did a good. I think we did a very good job in Obo Academy to do this. And for like error, I would say I think personally the biggest error, let's say, that I did, and I think that some of us in the community are still doing, and I probably am still doing, is to think that we can sort of front load training. So the idea that you take a new developer, you train them up to be an ontology expert or a knowledge graph expert, and then they know, boom, they know their job. So for us, I think the main insight is that these processes should be ongoing processes. There should be things that happen like if you're building an organization, you should always implement something like your own seminar series, your own forums for doing this kind of cultural build-up of knowledge, and not rely on something like a course that you do once and then you forget about it. So I think these kinds of trainings should be an ongoing thing, and that is, I think, something that we are still learning.
Yeah, I can 100% subscribe to that. So that is also one of my biggest errors, was basically to believe that I could just create enough material. I could just take people and then fill them up with knowledge, and then they would be somehow functional. And this and really in a fast-paced manner of, okay, I prepare everything as fast as possible, and you will get it, and then you will see how great that is. And also, one thing here is I want to mention is my biggest success factor, or comes also from an era. I try to not sell the technology. So it's not, even if we are focusing on knowledge graph and what can the knowledge graph do for us, the question or the approach should not be about the technology at all. So I'm really focusing for the first introduction. We are really focusing on a totally relatable use cases where we create problem points where of course these problems can be solved with knowledge graphs, so we can jump from there. But really that case should be not about or the first goal should not be, okay, I want to teach knowledge graph, but I want to give you a relation point in something you can understand and where you can jump off. Of course, for a developer, if we have data scientists and so on, then it's much easier to jump into that technical part as their thought process. But for most people, it's really, okay, I have a regular problem in my life, so how can I relate that to this technology, and how what is the pain point I can solve? Because then it's really people can, and that's what we notice with knowledge graph all along, can really relate to these problems that are in there. And I think, the most prominent case that is made all the time for the knowledge graph is that, okay, we have different silos, we can connect things together, we can do a semantic layer on top of our different silos. So at least from a data engineering perspective, that's we have people that are coming from that background is the most prominent case. And I think really giving people a question of, okay, you can sit together and please answer me that question, and that question would relate to somebody that the engineering people would have to talk to the purchasing department or have a look at the supply chain. And then they cannot answer that, because if you don't have the silos connected and cannot bring this to the table, then you are not able to understand the whole thing. And then if you afterwards, after that failure of, okay, you cannot connect this because they are talking two different languages. If you then say, okay, we can find common ground, we can find a common model where all of the aspects that we want to talk about are included from these different domains, then you can show, okay, yeah, and by the way, that's an ontology. And the thing that we are talking about all the time are instances. And that's the basis of knowledge graph. Do you understand? And that's really the point where, okay, yeah, then it makes sense. And then you can go to every channel that you or every section of the knowledge graph world you want to go.
A worrisome thing that I've seen is that people build these knowledge graphs for very narrow domains. And I feel like those are just the new silos now. So the whole interconnectedness and interlinking is something that should be emphasized. And then from there, we actually get to technological issues as well. Now all of a sudden technology does matter.
So maybe since we've taken rounds now, we could take the chance to look at the chat or look at maybe You raised your hand here.
Yeah,
we have a full room. We didn't show you, but our room is even fuller than we've shown you. Hello. So then.
Yeah, I would like to emphasize on what Florence Hudson. My name is Thilan Kumanasinghe, and Florence Hudson mentioned. We can get the resources down to the students in a one place, like one shop. It's great, and also when you compare that with the success stories and how to teach these things in a classroom. So when we try to match that with the learning objectives and learning outcomes, when you're trying to measure them with some of our metrics that match out to our syllabuses, so what I felt is giving a project that is students really motivates, that makes more interesting to the students, and they always think about the project instead of giving an assignment. Just one assignment based on the lecture material, and then we try to grade that kind of, it won't take to the next level. Initially I tried that approach, it didn't go well with me. Then I realized, like, getting the feedback from the students, I changed my strategy to the whole project is breakdown into the end of the semester, end of the term project is broken down into multiple assignments. I even say this is the end of the semester project, but the assignment, let's say I have 5 assignments, and the last 2 assignments related to the project. So the 3 and 4 is like a stepping stone assignments to do the project in the class. So that way the whatever the content we taught in the classroom helps them to apply and test it out for the projects. That's true in the data science class. So I thought of sharing that because it's like that way, and also bringing projects from, like, the outside, as like, my classroom, I use the projects from brought from the exercises from NASA and the Oak Ridge National Lab. So that way the students are much excited. Oh, this project is not just as instructors, like be motivated, and pair that student groups if possible, with an external mentor from the NASA or Oak Ridge Lab. So when they come to class, like every 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and give them update. They are motivated students, and they go, when I ask them to go and finish this, they go 110%.
So
Francois Char. And what I would be interested to hear is your opinions about the various kind of audiences, because we haven't discussed that. And I think there's a lot of variation if you're talking to students, undergrads, or if you're doing some training for a company. And also, like, even if you're talking to professional audiences, there are very different backgrounds and very different industries and very different expectations of what a knowledge graph is and how it will help in this particular context. So I would love to hear your...
And let's not forget the 7-year-olds.
And that's the most important, right? That would be the first to start with, because if you can get something explained at that level, I think you have the core.
or even your grandma or your
spouse.
Grandmother
or your spouse.
Yes, I'm trying to always explain what I do, and my friends always like, what does she do? But
I would just do an interactive camera now.
Okay. So anyway, I wanted to say that actually currently so I'm Katarina Kari, and I work in IKEA Systems BV, which is the franchisor of IKEA. So I'm working with knowledge domain experts, IKEA experts, who have no technical background. So my teaching material is currently just about, there exists this thing called, like, we express this in triple. So it's really from basics. And the biggest, probably failing, the hardest thing to teach is the class versus instance structure, which I think was mentioned here before. Like, why do we need this abstraction to the schema level? What do you use that for? And then what are the instances? So last year in KGC, I gave a talk about games we play for them to understand that. And when I'm listening to you, I'm just like taking notes so much, because I need to improve still on all the material inside IKEA. But one thing is that could there be a way in, somebody's really nailed the explanation for this one and then share it? Like, where's the community for best practices in teaching these things? Like these games that people were like, that's a really fun game. I'm like, you should play it in your organization. And this could be a way in which you could really explain it to people. So that's one thing. Like, first of all, like talking to Rolf as well.
So maybe pick that up. Cogan, do you want to take that jump?
Yeah, but definitely, like, where's the space where we can say this person explained it really well? So producing this learning material and having a platform for learning material, I'm sure there exist those as well, but could we collaborate there? And then another one, when to technical people, it's a completely different story. You don't have to explain class versus instances to people who've gone through some object-oriented programming thing or something. They understand that, but for them,
You'd be surprised.
but then there's some who are like, I could do this with that other database, or I could do this because they come from this application-driven understanding of like, it's just an application, I'm going to do it with the tech I know best. So that's usually the one. But one thing there helps, which I think Cogan, no, it wasn't Cogan, it was who mentioned it before? Nicholas. Yes, you mentioned this before, is competency questions, the whole process of thinking about it. So competency questions, I say something like, imagine you have this competency coming from management, for IKEA, for example, where it is, what is the gross margin on products we sell in the Asian market that are, and the products are sustainable. Those are like our sustainability driving products. And then I turn to engineers. I'm like, imagine writing the SQL join for that.
Yeah.
Imagine that. And then they feel the pain, and then they slowly start to understand why this might be useful.
So maybe it's also because we have this open source relational material that is coming. Maybe we have or so many initiatives where things are curated, collected for self-paced learning. I want to also pose an open question. Also, so if somebody wants to emphasize on Katarina's question. Sorry.
I think Nico had wanted to comment on the audiences really quickly that we were just talking about, that Katarina was.
So there are a few short references. So one very practical thing I think that makes all materials better is for people to look at this diataxis framework that Nicole mentioned before. I think one of the reasons why it's so hard to share explanations, good explanations, or great how-to guides or something like that is because we tend to kind of like mush all these things together in like either some kind of like big core monolithic courses, and then it's really hard to, for example, isolate this little thing that we want to communicate. That you would just want to know, how do you, for example, set up your triple store instance, and not like make this massive dig through this massive tutorial that introduces all these kind of concepts and makes all these explainers. So I think this framework is a really, really great starting point for anyone that builds up company internal or open source documentation sites to distinguish between these data types. And what I believe is kind of like the key for this audience's question, which is for me the most important one, because it's not in knowledge graphs, as we said a lot of times now, we have all these completely different audiences coming in with entirely different backgrounds. I think we should layer basically this concept of pathways on top of this of these kind of traditional diataxis categories. So basically, we create, we define the roles that we want to address with our resource. So we, for example, in our resource, we would have something like semantic ETL, knowledge curator, database curator, or sales experts, or something like that. We define these roles, and then for each of these roles, we go and create a pathway. And the key is here is that we don't need to create new teaching and training materials and how-to guides and reference guides for all of these different groups. But we can actually, we build our materials and in a common framework, but then we include and combine these in a way that it fits and addresses the kind of thought and backgrounds of these personas or roles that we try to teach. So this, I think, is at least something that is practical, and it helped us a lot, let's say, for our work, because we needed, for example, a guide for ontology curators who don't know anything about software, and we needed something, in any case. So this is something that makes a lot of sense. And lastly, I also want to just reiterate exactly this last comment about the competency questions. I really think development, like, it's a bit brutal, and I've seen it too many times, but I think, development without competency questions should really just not happen at all, ideally. And whether they are executable as in a Sparkle query or a Cypher query, or whether they are something that really needs some very, very careful analytics and thinking, doesn't matter. But a competency question-driven approach for guiding the knowledge graph people in your organization is really key. I think that needs to be getting across in all training activities.
So I'm wondering, we're all talking about the target users. Who are they? We're talking about students, we're talking about, I guess, professionals. Who are our target clients, so to speak, and target users? Do we think it's a range? Is that something we should be discussing here or afterward? It sounds like it would be good to do so that we could understand their needs and serve them better.
I think that's why we started with the different viewpoints of each of us. I think there's such a such a wide range of different people and users that we can aim for. That it's probably so we will probably not say, okay, this is the one now, and now we get to. I think we have to basically aim for everybody, and then really find brackets to, so okay, that fits for those, and that's fits really, I don't know if we can really find these groups, or if it's really somebody experienced always has to somehow predefine what is matching for this person in particular, and but I don't know.
There are as many type of audiences as there are knowledge graph definitions.
Yeah.
For what is a knowledge graph.
Definitely.
So maybe we need to do an exercise. I don't know who, somebody was talking about trying to get additional seed funding, but, what are the personas? Who are we aiming for? And what do they each need to learn for us to be able to bring the value of knowledge graphs to fruition in more ways? Maybe that would be an interesting community discussion.
What I want to pose as an open question in this whole thing is, because we've been now talking a lot about curation, a lot about we create content for different people. If we are thinking about teaching the traditional model that was also able to basically cope with this flexibility a little bit, was for a long period of time teaching in person. Yeah, having a teacher that could somehow relate, or somehow giving a direction to the things they are teaching. As an open question, what is the meaning, or what is the real importance of the on-site real student-teacher interaction? Maybe even doesn't have to be on-site, but what is this against this self-learning process of everybody can click on this at every point in time? I noticed that it has to be some kind of combination of both, that it's really great to have the theoretical part to be repeatable, self-learned, to be able to really understand that, go into different direction and get things. Then I have the theoretical concept, but for really application and really that initial intention and so on, it's really key to have some kind of human interaction, even if it's just virtual. Do you see that the same, or what is your experience and opinion on that?
Can I answer?
Go ahead.
Nicole, go
Oh,
ahead.
thanks. Yeah, I 100% agree that there has to be some kind of teacher-student interaction. That as much as we want to develop self-paced learning materials, and some people are really good at self-paced learning, I think it's so valuable to be able to have the interaction with a teacher, or even like a mentor, or someone where you can bounce ideas off. Me as a non-programmer working in a more technical field, I do a lot of these training materials myself. I run into problems like instantly because I don't know how to do the technical things, and having someone to be able to go to and ask questions is really valuable. And when we first started doing we developed the Obo Academy materials, and we started doing these online biweekly sessions with members of our team, and we tried to do a flipped classroom approach where we wanted people to do these lessons on their own and then come to us with questions. And it wasn't super successful. People didn't want to do it on their own. They wanted us to kind of lecture to them. So even when we give people self-paced learning materials, they don't always necessarily want to do it. A lot of people like to learn with like kind of a more of a lecture kind of format, or like a teacher delivering information where then they can ask questions. Or sometimes even having both, doing it on your own and then coming back for a lecture or something is also valuable. And as far as doing it remotely, I think it's been successful doing it remotely, and this is kind of the way we work now. So we don't really have the option or funding to bring ourselves together all the time. So I think remote is as good as anything. It's nice that we have the option.
I agree. And depending on who we're aiming for, could be that they don't have somebody locally that they can sit with and explain this to them. Knowledge graphs is kind of a newer area, even though we've been talking about them for over a decade. And so providing this hybrid environment, like with mentoring, we do use a Slack channel, data science career panels, with data science projects where we have students that come and we have open office hours, and we have students that help students through these programs. They'd feel like they were part of something bigger too. That's what we find. So I agree with Nicole that aiming for who we're aiming to help and who wants to learn it. And I think we could do that. We're doing that with the National Student Data Core. And we'll keep finding errors, as we were talking about, or things we can do better. But we have the technology when it's working. I know mine's a little iffy today, to help us do that.
So are there any other opinions? Because I know Veronica is sitting somewhere here and she's crying out that you have to do it in person.
So I have a comment that may sound very trivial, but I find no substitute for either pen and paper or whiteboard in an interactive session. Just being able to kind of interactively construct something where it's not just me delivering something, so it's not a one-way thing, but we can interactively construct a model or something like that. There's no substitute for that.
Yeah, I'm also advocating for, if the audience is considerably small, so if you have a room full of people where you can really have an interaction with, the best thing you can do to bring the point to the people is really to stand there and having a whiteboard, having them, giving them the key and to the whole thing and say, okay, please, let's find this out together. But I totally agree. Sometimes it's not feasible and makes much more sense. And remote is very fine, but I also feel something lacking in, even if I have a remote session and a whiteboard and everything is interactive, it's still different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something where I say, okay, it's just totally nostalgia, but there is some difference there. What I would also don't see is what has been traditionally when you have a teacher, you have some kind of learning concept, some kind of pedagogical yeah, some kind of red path you're going to through, how it's taught, what's the teaching style, and so on and so on. How do you, with your all your initiatives, keep this basically consistent, that the way things are taught is not too different from one session or from one resource to the other? That you keep things somehow consistent, that people are able to follow and learn from it, and at the same time also keeping things up to date. So if you if new stuff comes and this our technology is totally changing from one day to the other, then how do you keep things um, up to date in your systems?
So for us, we keep updating it. It's a very dynamic environment. We link to other people's content, so we don't have to keep checking if it's been updated or not. You know, like the UC Berkeley Data 8 content or the OpenDS for All GitHub content. We have, you know, videos and have open office hours and Slack channels. So we keep the conversation going. I personally believe that we have different learning styles. I know that when I was going through college, I was an aerospace engineer, and I had to take a lot of math and all sorts of stuff that, you know, I didn't have in high school. And I learned differently than a lot of my classmates. So I think different learning methods and different styles and different approaches actually can help us get to a more diverse community of learners. So I don't see that as inhibiting. But if you have a set curriculum, as an example, there's a school called the Webb Institute for Naval Architecture and Engineering in New York. They have exactly one curriculum. Everyone goes through the same thing, and that's it, because you have to learn that, right? So if that's the way this is, then we'd have to figure out how to do that, because we'll be limiting our reach and our impact of teaching more people if we limit ourselves to in-person.
Sure. Nicholas, what are your opinions?
So first, let me just quickly answer your last questions about consistency and up to dateness. So I think for consistency, it's typically, so first of all, I don't really think that consistency is that critical. So I actually, after 2-3 years of running this stuff now, we see that it's actually quite good for the learners to see completely different trainers coming along, teaching from extremely different perspectives. But nevertheless, despite the different, let's say, presentation styles and the different ways people talk about things, I think that you can get quite a lot of, positive consistency from providing templates, for example, for the lessons on the one side. And also, we are lucky enough that we have someone on our team that creates splash screens for the videos. We always have this 1 hour sort of system where we say 20 minutes should be just like front teaching, then 20 minutes discussion, and so on. So we have a sort of like basic structure around it. So, but I think embracing a little bit the fact that things will look messy and will be, especially in an environment that caters to multiple audiences, I think is also fine. Up to date, one thing that we do is that when we go over the same material over and over again, so there are some courses, like for example, how do you contribute content to an open source ontology project or something like that, which is something we would run every year. What we do is whoever volunteers to do this lecture, which is not always the same person, we will say one of your roles is to take the materials and really make sure that it looks correct, and they can make like a little tweak here and there, and usually this leads to some kind of updates as well. And lastly, I just want to mention that I'm a bit like on the fence with regards to the discussion on the in-personness that you've had all before, because I see the teachers as more like facilitators that encourage learning. Like our role, and that's why it's necessary for people like Nicole, for example, to lead a teaching initiative, is more to get people into the mode of wanting to learn rather than actually, conveying complex materials. I personally believe that a well-designed video tutorial is superior to most frontal teaching activities, and the good teacher is distinguished mostly by the fact that they get the students to be interested and curious about digging in and learning a bit more. So more like a facilitator for the students' own path to trying to understand the material rather than like someone that can explain stuff very well. But anyways, I do understand though your point, and maybe it is also true, and I'm a bit naive in this regard.
I agree. My comment was more on this, really not on the theoretical part, but really on that, yeah, inspiration. So like you said, so having somebody really bring some inspiration to the table and talk about things is in person is nice. But if I really want to bring up or yeah, translate a concept, I totally agree to you. It's probably easier for somebody to go through that self-paced, click on repeat 3 times and say, okay, now it really stuck. So Kogan, you have also Kogan?
Yeah, sorry, I thought you were gonna keep talking.
Sorry.
No, I just had a brief comment, which was, I wonder to what extent that we can provide interactive pieces, to kind of take the place of, um, the in-personness, right? Because whether we like it or not, the remote learning lifestyle is here to stay, right? And as much as we might prefer having the in-person experience, that's only going to work for people who can afford to travel, or afford the rates, right, of having somebody come in and actually teach. But when looking at what you actually gain out of, an interactive session with a person, right? It's having that immediate response to, no, don't do that. Or it doesn't work for these reasons, right? And in many cases, a sandbox that is appropriately designed can provide this sort of feedback by, like, you say you're in a little knowledge graph schema maker and you try to connect two different data types together, right? That doesn't work like that. And you can get these little sandboxes that support a small number of interactions, and then when they try to do something that's going to break one of those interactions, you can kind of give a detailed stack trace, right? But yeah, it's just something I think that it would be interesting to explore. To what extent can we adapt our existing technology to these interactive sandboxes to teach lessons? Um, yep, and we are, just as a reminder, Tim. We have, I think, 5 minutes left.
Yeah, I think one thing I wanted to do you want to say something about your project you have been starting? So because this is also I think one highlight we have at the end. We will also uh, try to collect all the links that we've been sharing in the chat and so on. But Kogan, do you want to highlight something?
Not really in particular.
Not
Sorry.
the GitHub project. I think it's no, it's not here.
Yeah, I added it to the links, in the Git, not the GitHub, the Google Docs. It's a pretty nascent, um, curriculum. It's essentially taking the same track as the Obo Academy, but it's really sponsored by the Knowledge Graph conference itself. So it's really trying to pull together. Well, you have all of these external and internal media, which are the keynote sessions, the workshop tutorials, master classes, right? And they have a list of topics that they address. Well, somebody who's new to the system, to the domain, or to the application use case might want to go in and learn about those topics first, right? So the curriculum, or the KG curriculum, is trying to provide little articles, little micro articles, and interlink them, so that way the attendees to, for example, the conference could very quickly get up to speed about a particular masterclass and then really be able to engage right off of the bat. It's, as I said, still quite young, and happy to engage with that. I put a link in the Google Doc. One of the things that I would like to do is to collect all of the comments that we've made, and maybe some notes, and then try to publish somewhere, even informally, a sort of retrospective of our views, and maybe a little bit of a roadmap of what looks cool from a pedagogical perspective moving forward. So please do try to leave your contact information within the notes if you'd like to be involved moving forward. That's all from my end. Thank you.
Maybe for the last 5 minutes, I want to give everybody, all of the panelists, short. What do you take with you from this discussion? And maybe if you have some points and something you want to get through, maybe with starting with Nicholas.
Yeah, so I would, first of all, it was an amazing discussion, and thank you very much for organizing it. I think one thing that I would really like to see more of is organizations and companies investing into open source and freely licensed materials. I also would like, we didn't mention this a lot before, I would really like to encourage really making materials public domain and not putting some kind of like software license or some CC BY or something on it, but just really making them CC 0, so that it's much easier, that this information can flow much easier from effort to effort, and we can reuse each other's explanations, works, and tutorials more easily. Yeah, and I think that what I take away from today is that there was a lot, of emphasis today again about the need of defining and catering to people with extremely different backgrounds, and I think that this diversity should be the main driving factor for the design of our curriculums moving forward. So there's no one size fits all, but we need to really think about how we can cater to various groups and how we can design a resource that can also make it very clear that this is where you, as the project manager or product owner of this company, should be looking at when you're interested in the subject, versus this is where you are looking at when you are the semantic ETL person.
Thank you. And Nicole, what is your point?
Can you hear me okay? I switched computers. Can you hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
can hear you.
Okay. I'd say the biggest takeaways from this was a great discussion. I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad that you brought us together, Cogan. This is wonderful. Well, one thing I had to pitch is please contribute to our Obo Academy. It's all open and freely online, so if you have a GitHub account, you can go in and directly edit it and make contributions. So I want to encourage anyone who may be interested in using it to contribute to it. Also, I really liked how Florence talked a lot about mentoring. I think that's something that we really need as a community, and I would love to see a way for us to develop a more formal mentoring system. I need to look further into the National Student Data Corps that you shared. That seems like a really great organization. I just think in general it'd be great if we could all mentor each other more, even informally. It doesn't have to be formally. I've had a lot of great mentors in my career, and I'd love to give back. And lastly, I really like the idea of developing the persona, speaking to what Nico was just saying, and Florence brought up the idea of having some kind of working session to develop different personas as a group. And I think I would love to participate in that. And I think that would be really valuable for us to do together.
Thank you. And Florence?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sorry for my vacation internet situation. I agree with everybody. I think there's an opportunity to create maybe a working group out of this, where we talk about OKN and knowledge graphs, and we create the personas and help each other. We're happy to leverage the National Student Data Core that we have, funded by NSF and the Northeast Big Data Innovation Hub, to see how we can build on it, like Nicholas was talking about. I think there are a lot of cool opportunities here, and I look forward to learning from all of you because we can all teach each other something.
Thank you. Then, Aura.
Well, good discussion. The one single thing that I think I need to really take with me is Cogan's observation that the modalities of teaching are changing, and that I'm really kind of excited about the idea of some kind of a knowledge graph sandbox where I could let people play with stuff. And I'm going to think about that very, very seriously. And I'll test that with my daughter, who, by the way, is not 7 anymore. She's 22, so we'll see.
I'm impressed with your
So
story.
you need,
the 7-year-old.
you need a new 7-year-old.
Yeah, no.
That's
So you were teaching her knowledge graphs 15 years ago?
Yes. She wanted to know what my PhD dissertation was about, so we sat down and talked about it. And for me, a transformative moment, because I understood that I can explain that.
That's
Well,
very
maybe we can host her to do an AMA, Ask Me Anything About Knowledge Graphs, or actually be on a knowledge graph, career panel or a learning panel or something. She sounds amazing.
I think we should even think about how does knowledge graph relate, or when should knowledge graph teaching begin? So in school?
Well, I mean, I think the real observation here is that these graph representations are a very natural and intuitive way for us to think about the world and model the world. And it's no big surprise that it can be explained to young people.
Then thank you all very much for joining, for all your inputs, for all the great discussions. I hope everybody who joined the session got something out of it. I took a lot of stuff which I have to cope with, where I say, okay, how to do this. I'm also taking Nicolas' approach and bring this to my IT consulting company, which is not traditionally as open as it should be with things that we create internally, but also that should be changing if it goes for me. And really, thank you all very much. And yeah, let's create that working group and make this better. So next year we can sit here and say, okay, yeah, things have changed, and learning and teaching knowledge graph has gotten better. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, all. Thanks you.
Thank you for bringing us together, Cogan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Glad you guys were all to make it. Enjoy the rest of your vacation, Florence.
Yeah, they just went to the pool. I'm going to go run after them.
Enjoy. Have a good one.
They've been hovering.
You got this.
Thanks
Right.
a lot. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You also for her.
Yeah, I think.
Shruti, are you still there? Well, I guess we'll just continue recording an empty room for some time, but yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Aura, Timm, for helping me organize this. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and I might see you virtually around.
Good discussion.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Cogan.
Bye bye.